All right, gentlemen, we are live. And I assume that the room will immediately begin to fill up, as these things tend to do. If I have discovered anything in my year at Heritage, it's that when we do a state of the sports market commentary, these things tend to be the most crowded virtual events that we do. And sure enough, dozens of people are rushing the virtual stage. As everybody can see, thanks for joining us here at the State of the Sports Market commentary here at Heritage Auctions. Chris Ivy's not here. He had Mike, how would you describe it?
A pressing endeavor that had to take precedence.
Man,
Wow.
That's my application for the marketing department right there, that statement.
You're in.
But that said, as far as I'm concerned, we have an upgrade because Dan Imler, the vice president of the sports category, is joining us here today, along with Mike Provenzale, the production manager and one of the auctioneers here at Heritage Auctions. I'm Robert Wolonsky, the communications director, and as we have done from time to time over the last year, we have gathered to discuss the state of the sports market, which, as we know, has undergone a radical transformation over the last 14 or 15 months. And we're going to discuss all of that. If you have a question for Dan or for Mike, because I don't imagine you have any for me, please drop them in the Q&A button down below, and I will ask them of Dan and Mike as we go throughout this. But the fact of the matter is, we're just going to basically have a free-form rambling discussion over the next 45 minutes or hour or so, while looking at some of the lots that have sold in the last year and discuss kind of the backstory behind them, why they have done so remarkably well, and what to expect. Because a few folks have sent in questions beforehand, and there are a lot of things going on in the market right now that they have questions about. And we'll probably get to them and your questions and kind of answer all of it over this fairly remarkable landscape over the last year. So Dan, let's start with you. Before we start looking at some stuff that is in upcoming auctions and look back at what the last few months have been like, what has been the most, certainly we've talked about and looked at and dealt with the explosion in the sports card market in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last couple of months, as we sort of begin to come out of the pandemic, and as we begin to sort of look back and reassess kind of how things took shape over the last year, what have been some of the revelations, as far as you're concerned, that have really sort of driven the market and will drive it forward in the near future?
Yeah, well, this has far and away been the most extraordinary year in our industry that I've ever experienced, and I've been doing this 25 plus years. The market has always kind of steadily increased over time, with peaks and valleys along the way. I mean, nothing ever goes up, in a straight line forever. But it's the appreciation in the marketplace has been kind of steady and gradual with a few, bumps along the way. But this last year is it's been meteoric. It's been crazy. And, we talk about all the different factors, involved with that run. And of course, the pandemic has been a major factor where people, I think are more into their hobbies. They're at home, they're on their computers. There's just been more awareness of the sports collectibles marketplace than ever. And there's just been an incredible influx of new buyers over the last year. And not just people putting their toe in the water. I mean, just people coming in at a really high level. Usually, when new buyers come into the market, they kind of start small and work their way up. But, we've seen really, with every auction this year, just an influx of new buyers at a high level. And that's really, really pushed things up at an incredible pace. And like I said, nothing goes up in a straight line forever. And I think, probably with our February platinum auction, which was just absolutely off the charts across the board, 30 million plus auction, just, really, really hit an unbelievable peak. We've started to see things level off a bit since then, which is only natural. And, I would say, I would call it, a correction, but a moderate, healthy correction. And I think one that will kind of, set set the table for, things to keep going up from here.
Well, see, that's an interesting thing, and that brings up one of the questions that was submitted before we began. We've certainly seen things, for instance, when I began at Heritage a year ago, the Michael Jordan 86 Fleer rookie in a PSA 10 was selling for about $30,000, and it was setting records every time it sold. Obviously, it got up to the past $750,000 mark late last year, but certainly we've seen that level off. And I don't think that's surprising, right? Because certainly a year ago, it wasn't necessarily before people started going through their collections and discovering that they and everybody else they knew had a PSA 10 in their collections, that the more that they came onto the market, certainly they weren't going for $750,000 anymore. But that said, I assume other things began to sort of take its place as the hottest, the best, the neatest, and the most record-breaking card.
Yeah, I think the Michael Jordan, the phenomenon with the Michael Jordan rookie and that incredible rise is actually got to be maybe looked at in a vacuum. That was just an unfathomable rise and almost a mania of sorts. And we all pretty much saw as being unsustainable and expected more of a correction with that particular card than across the board with the market at large, just given the population of that card, and just if you really drill down on the metrics of it, the number of PSA 10s and PSA 9s that are out there, that price increase, we just did not see that being sustainable. But I think that's now settled into really more of a true market level, and I think we may have started to see a floor on that, which again I think will rise from gradually, probably more gradually than what we've seen over the last 6 to 12 months with that card. But the market ebbs and flows with different categories. I mean, sometimes modern has been just ultra modern basketball has just seen meteoric rises, and vintage just kind of seemed like it's taken a back seat at times, and now we're seeing a slight shift where blue chip vintage now, ultra high end, ultra low pop is now the hottest segment of the market. So these things kind of these categories just kind of ebb and flow, and there's are a little bit trend oriented, but again, overall across the board, if you look at where we are today on everything versus 18 months, 2 years ago, I mean, it's just been an incredible run.
So it's been interesting to me as well to sort of see, because of the popularity of the sports card hobby in the last year as well. It's been interesting to sort of watch it on the high end and the low end. When you look on eBay, for instance, players who, just common cards, if a player has a great game, if he hits 2 home runs on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, that $3 card is suddenly worth $20. I mean, it really has sort of, it really has sort of bled over into the entirety of the hobby, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting element with modern cards and modern memorabilia, where you're dealing with active players. There's almost like a fantasy sports element to that. You're actually you're investing in that player's career, day-to-day performance, injuries, successes, failures. I mean, all that plays into it, and that's I think that's actually one of the aspects of the modern market that's been a driving force. I mean, sports. You look at sports, fantasy sports and gambling and things like that are huge driving factors on top of just general fandom. But yeah, I mean, if you're invested in Luka Doncic cards, you're invested in Luka, and every day what he does on a day-to-day basis, is has a direct effect on your collection, and sometimes your net worth.
Somebody asks, going back to something you brought up a little while ago, somebody asks in the Q&A, given the fact that there have been such a significant number of new bidders coming to us, and when I started here, it was 1.25 million registered clients worldwide. Now it's up to 1.5 million. And I assume a lot of that actually has been driven by the sports card market. Do you guys know, do you have a good sense of, and this is a question from somebody, where that additional volume is coming from? This person asks specifically, is it new money? Is it tech entrepreneurs? Just sort of where have you seen, we've talked about this a lot in the last year. A lot of people are looking at sports memorabilia, sports cards as tangible investments in a very uncertain world. So I assume that that's where a lot of this is coming from as well.
Yeah, it's a combination, but of, people coming in with just a, pure collector interest versus, coming at this from, an investment perspective and looking at this as, an alternative asset class. And then there's people that are kind of in the middle too. They appreciate the material for what it is, the character, the history, all that, and they have a bit of that, collector mentality at the same time, focused on making sound investments. So, there's a whole spectrum there, but I do believe that in the last year, we've seen more new buyers that are on the, toward the investment end of the spectrum for sure. And it's pushed the market forward, but, it also, from a stability standpoint, it's a little suspect. If you have people that are getting in this just to make money, buying something, just with the goal of looking for the next guy in line, willing to pay more, you're a little susceptible to, the ups and downs. Because if it's really all about the money, as soon as things may, pull back a little, if you don't have the pure love, the pure collector mentality, then it's, the investors are going to run for the hills and sell. So, you need at least a good solid base of people that are more in the middle or towards the collector side to really, sustain the market and push it forward long term. But to answer your question, definitely much more investors, speculators in the marketplace over the last year than ever before.
So it's interesting. This is a question that I get asked quite a bit, which is, how do you make room for or keep room for the real hobbyists, the real love, the people who collect for the love of it, at a time when, for instance, you can't go to Target anymore and find baseball cards or basketball cards on the shelves. And when you can, you are limited to 2 boxes per purchase. Because there is such a rush of investors who are buying those boxes and selling $20 blaster boxes for $150 on eBay, because everybody thinks that they can pull the golden ticket from those particulars. They can pull that 1-of-1 superfractor autograph. People who really loved it can no longer be part of it. So how are we helping them to stay part of a hobby that they genuinely and sincerely love?
Well, that the whole retail end of things is, it's a different world, obviously, than from what we do.
Sure.
Obviously, the card manufacturers are very good at what they do, very savvy to keep, keep people combing those shelves and, and ripping those packs and looking for those hidden gems. But, here at Heritage, we have multiple platforms, we all different price points, vintage, modern. It's obviously we're everything is online and fully accessible. So, we not a day goes by that we don't have an auction running with an incredible cross section of material, all different categories and different price points. So, come on down to Heritage. We got what you need.
Well,
definitely, there's an aspect of us that a big part of it is giving clients as much information as possible. Every item we've ever sold is in our archives. We do free appraisals, so no matter what you have, even if you have, of course, if you have $1 million item, we'd love to talk to you about it. But if you were digging through your collection, have some old cards, you want to find out what they're worth, we can help out with that too. So it's a good way for whatever level you collect at to find out the information you need to know.
Well, to your point, Mike, you don't know what today's $1 million item is. For instance, one thing we were going to discuss here was the Reggie Jackson, the 69 Reggie Jackson and a PSA Gem Mint 10, which is the first time. We just sold this a couple of months ago, and for the first time ever, it cracked the $1 million mark, which certainly is a significant indicator of where the market is, and certainly how the market evolves over a period of time, right?
Yeah, that actually was one of the most eye-popping results from our February Platinum. Not entirely unexpected, but still just incredible nonetheless. And it really speaks to the ultra, high-end, ultra low pop. This is a pop one, of an iconic 60s rookie card. So, this really proves that, when there's one seat at the table, anything can happen. We look, when you look at card prices per grade, the multiples or the ratios of, 9s versus 10s, usually it's fairly consistent. But when you get into a situation like this, where you have an iconic rookie card, one of one, anything can happen. I mean, for the longest time, 9s were selling for, 30 to 50,000. Then they went to 70, 80. But then for a 10 to go for $1 million, that's such an incredible multiple over the 9 price. That was just an unbelievable result. But again, it's a trophy card, and there's only one person that can claim ownership. So that's just a good, really a good kind of a test for when you get these iconic pop ones, ultra low pop one of ones. That was a spectacular result.
While we're on the subject of pop ones, PSA, gem mints, and all that other stuff, as you can expect, there have been a number of questions submitted about PSA, about the grading process, about the fact that grading has been paused, except for the highest end cards and the highest value or the highest price level in terms of getting individual cards graded. I'll sort of gather all of these questions into one, which is is the backlog at PSA good or bad for the hobby when they all catch up? Many people think that a PSA Mint 10 is certainly far better than a Beckett or a SGC. Is that in fact accurate? Just sort of talk, if you could, a bit about the overall ramifications of the PSA backlog and what this is going to mean going forward for the hobby.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been a challenge for us, but again, it's a product of this, incredible, tidal wave of interest in the hobby and in collecting. So, from that standpoint, it's great. I mean, it's just, it means that there's more activity, more hobbyists into collecting. But yeah, I mean, for us, we probably take in more raw material than any auction house in the world, and it's been a triple whammy for us. It's the costs gone up, turnaround times have gotten longer, and then when the grading companies have this kind of volume and this kind of backlog, they tend to really tighten up on the grading. So at the end of this process, after the money's spent and you finally get the cards back, we're not all, the grading can be harsh. So, and we're in between the clients and the grading services. So they, essentially we're an agent for the grading companies. And so we obviously have to do the best we can to manage client expectations throughout, what's become an increasingly difficult process. But, that's part of what we do. Part of the consignment process is managing the grading process as well. So I do hope, I mean, I know PSA and most of the other major services are scrambling to increase capacity and add staff and resources to get ahead of this, and hopefully that happens soon for everybody.
Well, folks have been asking, all right, so PSA can't get to my cards. Why can't I go to Beckett, and why wouldn't Beckett fetch the same price as a PSA? They're notoriously tough graders. SGC, there are other graders who have come into the market in the last year or so as well. Certainly given the fact that they have all become more demanding graders based upon the interest in and investment in the card hobby at this point, would you, obviously we tell people don't grade your cards before you send them in if they are in fact raw. We take care of that. But at the same time, if they're sitting on a cache of Beckett 10s, what do you tell them in terms of should they get them regraded at PSA, and what's the advantage of that?
Well, I think the different grading companies have different areas of strength. I think PSA prices are pretty consistently strong across the board, for different categories, modern, different sports. Beckett, seems to be a close match to PSA in terms of, market performance for modern. And, SGC, SGC, we use SGC as much as we can. They are highly competent graders, maybe some of the best in the business. And they provide great service to us. We've seen SGC prices really rise, over this last year, and cards in certain grades where there was a larger gap between SGC and PSA, we've seen that start to close. So, we always act when it comes to making decisions about grading. Obviously, we always act in the best interest of the client. So, we look at the card or the collection, and we take them in a direction with certain grading companies that we think are going to, produce the best results. And sometimes it's PSA, sometimes it's Beckett, sometimes it's SGC. Just depends on the nature of the material.
Obviously, I assume PSA, and several people asked this, and here we're looking at a Beckett, the Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant game jerseys combo that just sold for $516 in the monthly, which for a card I don't believe there was nothing to compare this against, correct?
Yeah, this was a great result. This is a card so rare. Actually, this card is, I put this in the category of vintage modern. I'm gonna, by the way, patent that. I've now invented a new category. It's vintage modern. So, but this card kind of represents the dawn of the modern basketball market. It's the first dual auto swatch card of Jordan and Kobe from it's kind of a groundbreaking card. And it's a series of 10. Only a few of these, are known in private collections. I think Beckett's only graded 3 or 4 of them. But there's no comps. This card in any grade has not been in a major public auction that I could find. So it was a difficult card to estimate. I think we estimated it at 300,000 plus, and that was really relying on a lot of gut instinct and limited feedback. So, and having it go for over 500,000, again, without any public comps to really rely on, I thought was a really impressive result.
Right, but and one of the reasons I pulled this up was not just the result, but obviously this is Beckett. Many people have asked, so should I take my 50s tops, vintage, or my vintage cards to PSA? Should I take the modern cards to Beckett? Is there any grading service that is particularly better at or better for any particular era of card?
Well, yeah, PSA for vintage, one of their big driving forces is the set registry, and SGC has a set registry as well. It just hasn't gotten as much traction as the PSA set registry, so that's always helped push PSA cards, and from that standpoint, like vintage baseball, even low to mid grade, vintage really any sport low to mid grade, PSA is a pretty reliable grader for those. The market's strong with PSA.
So a couple of folks have asked the same question in different ways, including an old friend of mine who asks, and I'll just has Heritage, this is just sort of a sidebar to a larger question, has Heritage ever considered developing its own grading service? which I think is an interesting question, given the fact that many folks in the sports category actually used to be card graders, I believe. So I assume that that's simply a thing that we wouldn't want to do, if only for the fact that it behooves us to have third-party graders involved in the auction business.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the business, is that it's a third party, non-biased, no vested interest, all of that. I mean, certainly we have people on our team that are, as you said, former professional graders, and probably as qualified as any of the top graders at any of the companies that could do it, have the skills and the experience and the eye for it. But to add that to our business model, I mean, obviously the immediate cries would be conflict of interest, right, and favoritism and all of that. So I think it works pretty well right now, just using third-party services. And again, it's the auction business and the grading and the grading business are two completely different business models.
Right, and we use third party, obviously, in the case of this 1916, 1918 Babe Ruth bat. We have to use grading authentication services for bats, grading services, authentication for autographs and for condition. It simply sort of takes it to the next step. We're not just selling a thing. We're not buying a thing simply because we told you that's what it is. It's because somebody else showed you why that is what it is.
And the same on the memorabilia.
It's adding
that
correct.
We have incredible experts that know what's good and have a wealth of experience, but we still rely on the third party authenticators on the memorabilia side to let everyone know there's no bias and we're staying out of the middle. But we do have that expertise, and we use that when people come to us who want appraisals, want to know if something's good. We can give them our expertise on that end as well.
Yeah, and it's a tremendous added value. I mean, we're adding a layer of expertise on top of our in-house expertise. I mean, the grading companies and the third-party authenticators really have helped push this marketplace. Since they've come to fruition. And in the old days, it was just the wild, wild west. I mean, it's me telling you, hey, Mike, this is one of the best Babe Ruth bats in the world. Take my word for it, and it's $1 million. Now it's.
I'm sold.
It's send me a check. So yeah, it's just what the market demands, and it's this is in other fields. Third party authentication and third party grading are standards of other industries as well, and it's helped.
Sure. I mean, look, several people ask about questions about authenticity. How do you know something is real? Well, we know it's real because we send it to experts who tell us it is or tell us it's not. Bats are X-rayed. Jerseys are photo matched. Things that we don't do and wouldn't want to do because we wouldn't want to be. You don't want to trust us to tell you that thing when somebody else can do it much better than we can, because that is their jobs to authenticate and to verify. That's
yeah.
As you say,
and obviously these are specialists too. I mean, most of the people on our team have a very, very highly competent and a broad range of material. But I mean, the bat experts are specifically bat experts, and the card guys are card guys, and the autograph guys are autograph guys, and they rely on very, very specific resources and databases and things that add a lot of value.
So I'm going to combine a couple of questions. And Chris asks, I have a vintage 50s baseball set. None of the cards are graded. Do I hear correctly that I should not get the raw cards graded before submitting to Heritage? There's a similar question asked by the great Ed Bark. If I had 60s autographed items, should I take them to Beckett or should I bring them to Heritage first for grading?
Go, Mike, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, with stuff that's raw like that, if you're intending to sell it, we handle the authentication process. As we said, through third party, we don't do it ourselves, but we will take care of all the submissions, the hassle. We pay for it on the front end. Consigners just pay on the back end what we pay. We don't make money on authentication or grading. So you don't have to deal with it. And we can also advise you, like a lot of people asking which company should grade which cards. A big thing for us is giving clients all the information so they can make an educated decision. So we'll take a look at your set, let you know which grading service we would recommend, which would give you the best yield. And then we'll take care of getting it all graded and then put it into an auction. So it's a full service for us, and you don't have to worry about dealing with anything other than sending it in, enjoying the auction, and then cashing a check on the end.
You know, it's been interesting because I know obviously we've started these monthly auctions to meet this demand that we're talking about. And those are only items that have been authenticated and graded. You know, people have asked me as well, and there's a question here. Are you accepting ungraded vintage 1960s football, for instance, or will no one pay a decent price anymore for ungraded cards and sets, even if they pass the eye test? Because as we know, one person's you look at something and go, well, that has to be a 10. Meanwhile, it comes back a 4, given the fact that things are being graded far more stringently these days.
Yeah, we're still taking in a lot of raw material and selling it raw. Again, you know, expanding on what Mike said, you know, we add a lot of, you know, a lot of value in the consignment process by facilitating the grading and a third-party authentication, because, you know, we also help with the advisement and the decision making on what to grade, because we, you know, it's especially critical now that the rates have gone up to where they are, because you only want to submit when you're going to get a return on investment for that, for, you know, for your grading fee. And there's a threshold where it just doesn't make sense. So we help consigners kind of find that line where, you know, you're only adding value, you're not overgrading to the point of diminishing returns, because it's all about maximizing, obviously, the value of the property. And some things, you know, are you're going to net more selling it raw than incurring the cost of grading at a, you know, there's a certain threshold there. So, you know, consigners, you know, a lot of them don't have the ability to, you know, draw the line and you know, make the decisions the way we can on their behalf.
I'll just answer this question from Ralph. Does Heritage sell only baseball cards? We do not. We sell everything. How's that for a general answer?
I challenge them to find something we don't sell.
That's exactly right. You know, it's interesting. Somebody points out, wondering, you know, Panini has continued to massively increase production, ignoring the lessons of junk wax. You know, there are a lot of Doncic and PSA 10s out there these days. What do you see as the conclusion of these two forces at work? The fact that there are people out there desperate to get their hands on these cards, yet at the same time, there are companies who are starting to produce more than I think probably the hobby can or would like to see sustained.
I think like anything else, you just got to educate yourself and just, you know, try to gather as much information you can on that. I don't know, you know, what kind of disclosures these companies are making in terms of production or things like that. But, you know, whatever information is out there, obviously, if you're going to make significant investment in that marketplace, you should do your best to, you know, educate yourself on those levels of production.
Right. So I wanted to, one thing, several people have asked about photographs and autographs, autograph photographs. And one thing that I've been incredibly fascinated by in the last year is the fact that these photographs, these PSA DNA type ones that are used to make cards. There's, I think, one for the Honus Wagner, the T206 that's upcoming. These photographs have seen a remarkable uptick in the last couple of months as well. What accounts for that, do you think?
Well, the photos in general have been undervalued for so long. I think we finally started to see them, you know, get some their overdue respect, you know, in the last few years. Just, you know, if you think about the, you know, aesthetic qualities, rarity, you know, of course, having PSA come in and identify type 1 photos and you know, help to kind of standardize things in the way they, you know, bring a lot of the same things to the table that they did with cards has really pushed that market forward. But and then as it relates to cards, that's an aspect of photo collecting that is gone, over the moon. Because again, now you've got a crossover. You've got all the allure of photo collecting and all those qualities, and now you've got the parallel to the card market. I mean, and if you're a high-end card collector, I mean, cards don't have a lot of display quality, but if you can find an original Type 1 image that was used to produce that card, it's just to me it's just an incredible combination. And then the item we're looking at now is really like the ultimate confluence of all of that. You've got the Jackie Robinson's rookie card, which is been probably one of the hottest cards over the last year. You got the Type 1 photo, which is an incredibly rare example. The caption on the back of this photo is really special too. I think there's a few examples of this photo known, but none of the others have this interesting caption on it, where you can see here, reported talk of a strike against Jackie Robinson above Negro player of the Brooklyn Dodgers by the St. Louis Cardinals. So this speaks directly to the breaking the color barrier and all of the challenges he faced. So, I mean, in addition to having this be a Type 1 photo of Jackie's rookie card, which is the hottest card in the market right now, you've got this caption on the back, which just, crystallizes the trials he faced as a rookie. It's just checks every box and then some. So to see this, go over 400,000, that was an incredible result at the time. I remember we were all just blown away by it, but then, you step back and you digest it, and it makes sense.
So look, we talk a lot about the modern cards, and there are many questions about the modern cards, but I think it's probably worth noting that the T206 Honus Wagner, certainly the card that everybody knew about, even if they didn't know about cards 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. The cards that were always the coveted cards remain so. Just a few months ago, we sold this one's just an SGC authentic. This wasn't even really graded. Sold for $2.5 million. We have one on the upcoming sale in March 6th to March 8th, which is already at 1.625. This is actually graded as a 1.5. So I think it's probably fair to say that the cards that were always there are still going to be there. That there is, in fact, we can talk about a bubble. We can talk about where's the market going. The fact is, there are some things that are always going to be those holy grail pieces. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the Wagner is at the top of that list for sure. And, along with, the 52 mantle. Now I would put the 48 leaf Jackie Robinson rookie in that league as well. It's every time a Wagner comes on the market, it's an event. It's a big hobby event, and everybody, says, wow, and what's going to happen here? Because every time one comes up, the bar gets reset. It's, this is like, it's a kind of a transcendent item. It's like, the folklore associated with it, just the iconic nature of it. I mean, it's like one of those things where if somebody that was not a baseball collector just said, hey, I want to own like the 10 most iconic collectibles period in the world, a Honus Wagner, T206 Wagner is going to be on that list. Actually, maybe even on a list, and make a list of 5. So the demand is always going to outstrip supply by a wide margin, and that authentic example hitting 2.4 million, I believe, it was just unbelievable, and now sets up the sale here of the 1.5, and we'll see. It's going to be wild.
And as Dan was talking about earlier, the investment aspect and investors coming in, Collectibles is unique that there can be iconic assets. If you're talking about stocks or real estate, there isn't something like this, or the 52 mantle, or the Jackie Robinson rookie that you can just say everybody knows what it is, understands it's valuable just from an image of it. So those people who have come in spending big money want those iconic pieces, and so those are always going to hold a special place and a special value, certainly.
Well, I mean, this is the PSA. This is just a VG3 that sold for 162. I don't imagine that number was anywhere near fathomable 1 or 2 years ago.
The nicest 3 you're ever going to see, though. I'll say that.
Yeah. And this is like really a great example of buying the card, not the holder. Just and the value of eye appeal. And that's why I like bringing this card to people's attention, because if you just put your thumb over the label, it's just a knockout, and of course it all starts with that centering, which is a huge challenge for the 52 mantle, and for a 3 to bring that price like that, 160K, is really, I think is really fantastic, because it shows how people are really starting to just focus on aesthetics and less about the technical grade, because that's all that matters really at the end of the day. You own the card, it's every time you pick it up and look at it, are you looking at the label or are you looking at the card, and how does that, and what's the impact of that? Do you go, wow, oh my gosh, this is, every time you look at it, it's gotta knock you out. Which, so anyway, that's a 160, like on paper, 160K for a 3 is incredible, but then you see this card and you understand why.
I have to say, I actually was fortunate enough. I was in the office and got to hold the card, and there's a certain point at which I just didn't care what it was graded, because it was just neat to hold that and the Wagner on the same day. And there is something special about holding that history in your hand, which brings us to the antithesis of that, something from brand new that you cannot hold in your hand. And this is Mike Provenzale's specialty. If you're not aware, Mike has been on NPR repeatedly talking about Top Shots and the NFTs, because Heritage was the first auction house to actually sell the non-fungible tokens, the NBA Top Shots. And just a few weeks ago, this LeBron James 3 of 59 sold for $387,000, which was the highest price ever paid for a Top Shot. So look,
still is, even though the market moves very quickly. That was a week ago. It's still the top price.
You bought it, didn't you, Mike?
No, far out of my league, I'll say. And many people.
I heard your NFT collection is second to none.
I have 5 cards for which I finally got the fortune of paying $9, and I believe they're worth $10 now. So
there you go. See, that's appreciation.
Oh, yeah. I really appreciate it. Hey, so Mike, let's talk a little bit about this, because certainly, Top Shots are now appearing in every auction. People are actually coming to us to sell them, as opposed to through the marketplace, for a very specific reasons. Do you want to talk anything about that as well?
Yeah, obviously demand has increased. Anybody that's been involved in Top Shot pack drops has seen every single time there's more people trying to get them. So there's a lot of activity in the marketplace, but a lot of people have brought them outside of the marketplace and to auction houses, including us, because it's easier to get paid outside of it. We pay settlement out 30 days after an auction closes. We've never paid a consignor late or short in over 40 years of business. And there are restrictions in the Top Shot marketplace about how much money you can take out each day. So with us, you don't have that problem. So we've seen a lot of premium Top Shots and other NFTs coming out of the marketplace into the auction world. And if they want to get them in front of the best bidders in the industry, which we have. And so we've seen a lot of great ones. We have some great ones up for auction right now that are going to close next week. And we've seen a lot of our traditional collectors moving over into that field. It's the next big thing. It exploded at the beginning of the year, but it has staying power. And there's been a lot of good sales, a lot of good prices realized, and I expect that to continue.
So people are asking, are people who are buying Top Shots different from those who buy the tangible vintage or modern cards, or is it in fact the same collector who just wants to diversify the things that they collect?
They're similar. I'd say there's a small percentage if you had a Venn diagram that do both tangible and NFT, and that group is growing. But people that collect NFTs are just like people who collect tangible things. They have the same passion, they have the same interest. It's just a different format that they collect in. It's a cool new thing. The world is heading in that direction. Society's heading in that direction. The NFT market does lean a little young, but I've talked to plenty of people who have been in the hobby for decades that are looking into it. And the biggest thing for moving people over is if there's consistency in the prices, more people will get interested. It's definitely a great product. It's backed by the NBA, so it's very secure. The blockchain technology makes it very secure. And like with any collectible industry, this one has exploded faster than any, but it develops. People find things they like about it, the certain niche interests, and there's a lot of that to offer with NFTs, especially Top Shot.
And they don't take up a lot of room in your house.
That's true. They're very easy to handle. You know, your kids aren't going to mess with them. Your dog's not going to chew it up. You don't have to worry about that. There are ways to display them now. Infinite Objects offers a video frame so you can display them and have them on your desk. And it's just, especially if you're a basketball fan, it's a cool new way to collect. And there's a lot to learn about it. And if anybody has questions, I spend a lot of my time talking to people about what it is, and happy to do that with you as well.
So, hey, while that's a great thing for you to mention, tell folks how they can get a hold of both of you, because there are many questions here and we may not get to all of them. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to launch the speed round. But if they have a questions about Top Shot, Mike, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
MikeP@ha.com, or you can reach out to me on any of our social media platforms.
Dan?
And I'm at dani@ha.com.
We do make it easy here. I'm at robertw@ha.com, which even I can't forget. Somebody does ask, Mike, will Heritage be launching an NFT platform? I'm going to let you answer that.
We have not started that yet. Certainly it could be a possibility down the road, but not something we're discussing right now. We are just trying to, as we do with tangible collectibles, be an agent representing consigners and offering their items. And I'll say our modern art department has 3 NFTs up right now for those people who are into it. So
right, in our modern and contemporary, we have 3 Beeples, which are,
yes, and you might see a recognizable auctioneer calling those. So when their auction closes.
So do you get to call that because you're the only one in the office who understands what a non-fungible token is?
No, I am a big fan of our modern contemporary auction and our urban art department, and I am very blessed that they asked me to call their auctions.
So we're going to approach the speed round shortly, but we pulled this up here, this Ted Williams autograph, which sold for $78,000 recently, and several people have asked, all right, they have autograph pieces. Some of them are. What makes an autograph piece, one autograph piece, better than another? Is it personalized? Is it less valuable? There's always been sort of stories that you shouldn't have a card signed because that actually decreases the value of a card if it's not something you pulled from a pack. So, Dan, how would you best explain it to people?
If I had to give a one-word answer, it would be aesthetics. You're combining 2 aesthetics here. You know, you've got the autographs, which, you know, have their own character elements, and then the card itself, you know, so now you've got the combination of the quality of the autograph, the placement on the card, the quality of the card itself. And what we're showing here with this Williams is when it like all comes together perfectly. You know, a centered card. I don't even care if it's got VG corners. It's just incredible eye appeal. Perfect canvas, and, you know, vintage Williams signature on the perfect spot on the card. So autograph cards, again, in general, like the photos, kind of blend to, you know, 2 categories. You got autographs and cards, and I just think there's so much character in signed cards, and just base, you know, on a base level, the whole notion of presenting somebody at some point presenting a player with his own trading card to sign, whether it's a kid or at the ballpark or somebody at a show. I mean, I just think it's a, you know, it's a cool, it's the ultimate, you know, vehicle to acquire an autograph. And then, like this Williams is just unbelievable. $70K was incredible price for that.
And like we talked about at the Open, Dan was talking about how so many more people have come into the industry. That's how the industry grows and evolves. Like you said, people used to think that was not something you should do, get a card signed, but now there's more people in the industry. People like it, and they don't care what people thought. There's room for everybody. People who don't think cards should be signed and people who love cards that are signed. There's room for them all, and that's certainly an aspect of the market that has begun to grow.
Yeah, there's like an innocence in that too, where somebody put a Jackie Robinson rookie card in front of him to sign. They don't care. It was all about that moment and getting that autograph and that experience. And, they weren't thinking about, oh, I got to keep this card in perfect condition. So, it's going to be worth a fortune down the line. So I love autograph cards.
Yeah. And in the auction right now, we have a Roger Staubach signed card where he added the Captain America inscription. So, if you're someone who's a fan of a certain player and you like that aspect of it, there's definitely room out there for you to find what you like. And the great thing about it is you can pay what you think it's worth. You don't have to worry about people saying that's not worth as much because it's a signed card. If it's valuable to you, then it's worth what you think it's worth.
All right, gentlemen, let's start the speed round. I'll leave it on this Babe Ruth autograph ball, which is sort of one of the most iconic pieces that one might be able to find. All right, this is sort of an interesting subject, and we've discussed this a little bit, Mike, you and I, about, all right, so we're talking about things moving to digital, people wanting digital cards, yet at the same time, that has also made things that were once very tangible, like tickets, they no longer really exist. I think we've seen ticket stubs actually become one of those things that are incredibly and increasingly valuable. Where do you see that market going in the near future, Dan?
Tickets, I think, definitely have some serious growth potential. Again, there's a lot of factors like baseball cards with the grading companies, encapsulating them, authenticating them, and now, creating registries. That creates a great foundation for growth in that market. And then there's just a lot of great character and character elements with ticket collecting. I mean, it's a moment, it's a moment in time, and it's obviously there's various graphic elements to tickets and condition factors. So there's a lot of cool nuance involved in ticket collecting. And I think, again, like cards, you'll see the blue chip tickets to, start to really rise. One item we have in our current auction that I love is the ticket stub to Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. Just so cool. There's only 4,000 people in attendance at that game to begin with. The Hershey Arena in Hershey, Pennsylvania. How many, retain those stubs? I think there's only, a handful in the PSA registry that have been authenticated. So it's really a cool piece. And I think, particularly with those like ultra iconic events, Jackie Robinson's debut, the first All-Star game in 1933, just those caliber tickets are going to really, I think, jump.
All right. Somebody asks, well, so obviously PSA grades those, all the grading services will grade tickets as well. So that's certainly a thing that's going on. Somebody asks, the uptick in pricing direct from Panini for high-end issuances like the National Treasure Series, do you think those are good investment products, or are they being priced up because the market is so hot? So certainly, and this I think relates in a lot of ways to the fact that there have been many questions about the unopened wax boxes and cases question that comes up quite a bit, which is, are those still sound investments? Certainly we've seen boxes of cards from as recently as 2015, 2020. Certainly if there's a hot rookie that year with the potential of an autograph in there, that also drives the price of that sealed box up as well. So as folks are getting into those higher priced specialty items being offered by Panini or Topps or whomever, do you recommend that they buy those, they collect them, they sell them later? Sort of how do you advise folks who come to you about those newer products?
I would not offer any advice in terms of financial investment, only advice in terms of collect what you love. If you're really, if that's a product that, you're really fond of, and, you're looking for certain cards, certain players, and, from a collecting standpoint, go for it. Again, like anything else, educate yourself as best you can, to protect yourself from the investment side of things. But, you're obviously putting faith in the manufacturers, and, that things aren't going to get overproduced, things like that. But again, it goes back to the, old adage, if you collect what you love, you'll never go wrong.
Right. I think that's an incredibly key point to stress. We always tell people, don't buy because you think it's going to be worth X in X amount of years. Buy it because you love it, because you may want to live with it or may have to live with it forever.
Mm-hmm.
I've never bought anything. I've only bought a handful of things at auction. Never with the intention of reselling them, always with the intention of loving them because they meant something to me for a particular reason.
Yeah.
Here's a quick question. It seems like there should be consistency in the grading process. In other words, a 10 should always and still be a 10 if it was ever a 10. It seems like now maybe you pay more for a graded card and perhaps in turn you're getting a lesser grade. I'm assuming because of the strict or the stringency that card grading companies are putting on these things. Is that just the reality of things now, that yesterday's 10 may not be tomorrow's 10?
Well, yeah, I could tell you, today's 10 is definitely not yesterday's 10. I mean, there's no denying that the grading standards have changed over the years, and for the most part got increasingly stricter. I don't know where it's really heading. I can't imagine that they're going to get much tighter. We hear about things like, artificial intelligence and more, technology coming into the process, which, sounds like it's being developed and investigated. Not sure how that's gonna change things. I don't know how it's gonna change the grading standards necessarily. I could certainly see it increasing efficiency in the process. Yeah, I mean, the trend has always been, the more volume that the grading companies are handling, they tend to tighten up. We've definitely seen that. And now the volume is as, crazy as it's ever been, and they're as tight as they've ever been. But I'm not sure if I'm really answering your question, but
No, it's good. Again, it's a speed round, so you don't have to be that complete, Dan.
Oh, thank goodness. I don't have to be accurate.
Well, I didn't say that. All right. So let's get to somebody and this is a great question. Obviously, the sports card market has exploded of late. Other areas have grown as well. What is your opinion? And we've talked about this a lot in the office, which is about will memorabilia one day catch up with it? Certainly game used jerseys, which is what this one person wants to ask about. What's the state of that market? But sort of memorabilia overall, keeping pace with or one day catching up to and transcending the sports card market.
Yeah, I absolutely think memorabilia is going to make a run and has a lot of upside right now, and especially relative to the growth in the card market, which has outpaced memorabilia. It's really interesting because we've actually seen really high end memorabilia, particularly like game used material, bats, jerseys, really dry up in the marketplace. We have had a thankfully a smattering in our last several auctions, but whereas in the past we'd have 25 to 30 just killer game used bats in a given auction, now we're just seeing a handful. Same with with flannels, vintage baseball flannels, things like that. They've really dried up. I think we're starting to see that stuff really trend up, and rightfully so. I mean, again, just if you look at the relative supply of that stuff, it's hugely undervalued, particularly relative to cards.
And talking about how many new people have come in, many people, when they start collecting in this industry, start with cards and then it expands out. There's a lot more nuance to autographs and game used and game worn items, a little more education you have to do, which we're always happy to help clients with. cards is a little bit more straightforward, so it's a good stepping stone into the hobby. And I would expect, like Dan said, these people who are coming in and fresh to it, they start in cards and they expand into the memorabilia area.
All right, we'll get to a couple more, and I have to say, the fact is, we're probably not going to get to everybody's. So again, Mike P. and Dan I at HA.com will be happy to answer your questions. The process of consignment is on the website. Mike will also be happy to walk you through that if you reach out to him. Correct, Mike?
That's correct.
I'm sure Dan would as well. Certainly a lot of folks.
He's got to get by the pool. Look where he's at.
That's right.
Certainly a lot of people have come here with things to consign and questions about whether they should get them consigned.
Well,
they want to ask about
real quickly. It's a very simple process for us. We give free appraisals on anything, not just sports, of any of our 40 plus departments. Ask us what it's worth. We'll let you know. If you are interested in selling it, we're the best place to do that. And especially now with the still a little bit in the pandemic, we can send out the paperwork via email. It can be signed via email. Everything's covered on our insurance when you ship it to us, and we'll take care of it from there. So pretty simple process.
And somebody had a question about how to protect their raw cards until they do something with them. There are plastic cases, plastic sleeves out there that you should get. Absolutely. You should take care of them as best you can. Please, whatever you do, do not put them in those plexiglass bricks. Those are card killers.
Yeah. Keep them out of the sunlight too.
Put them in a plastic sleeve, put them in a box, and then send them to Mike or Dan. Don't send them to me, though. Several people have asked, what's the next growth in cards? Is it hockey? Is it, obviously, we saw the first Gretzky in a PSA Gem Mint 10. The OPC sell for over $1 million, the first hockey card to do so. Is it golf? Is it hockey? Is it boxing? Is it soccer? We have several Pele cards that are in this auction that are doing incredibly well. Certainly, we've seen growth in all of these. Is there any one that you sort of look at and go, yeah, that's the next place this is going to happen?
I think football's, lagging a little bit, and I think we'll catch up. I mean, it's still a very healthy marketplace, but if you look at the, elite blue chip cards in football, Unitas rookies and Bart Starr and all the way up through the 60s and 70s Bradshaws and Staubachs. I think those cards haven't quite kept up, but I think we'll start to catch up.
And soccer, definitely, based on where it was a few years ago to where it is now, there's great growth potential there. And non-sports cards is doing well. Same thing, where considering where it was a few years ago, and it's finally starting to get a little respect. So those are areas that if you're interested, you should look into, and you can find some nice items and make a good profit if you're thinking about selling them in the next few years.
I mean, look, I find all of this terribly.
I'm sorry, Robert, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I find all of this incredibly fascinating. I mean, look, if you told me a year ago that Pokemon cards would be selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, that boxes of cards that were unopened and still sealed would sell for the extraordinary amount that they sell for. Here's in this auction, there's the 1999 Wizards of the West Coast Pokemon. It's kind of Wizards of the Coast, excuse me. I'm sort of fascinated by all of it. Well, gentlemen, we've been here for over an hour. There's a lot of questions. I think we've kind of addressed many of them. If you didn't get it answered, you can email it to me at robertw@ha.com, and I'll pass it along to Mike and Dan, or email Mike P@ha.com or Dan I@ha.com, and they'll answer your questions because, look, we're here to serve both sides of the equation, right? Those who want to sell and those who want to buy. Our next big auction, and we have weeklies and we now have monthlies, but obviously our spring sports catalog auction begins or goes into extended bidding at 10 p.m. on Thursday the 6th. Look, I long before I came to Heritage, and one reason I came here is because I just used to browse the catalogs all day and go, well, I just want to work at a place where I can go hold a 1916 blank back Babe Ruth rookie card, which is in this auction, and the Honus Wagner. And here's a Tom Brady.
I'll say if you enjoyed this, for our auctions, we have live closing shows. which will be Thursday, May 6th, starting at 7:30 p.m. And it's going to be a lot of this, talking about the auction, talking about the industry. Tony Giesi's on with me, so you never know what he's going to talk about. So if you're enjoying watching this, you'll probably enjoy that as well.
And some song and dance, I'm sure, right?
There will be a musical parody, I'll tell you that. So to the very small demographic who looks for that, we've got you covered as well.
And you'll have a lot of folks from the auction house actually talking about some of their favorite pieces in this auction. For me,
yeah,
for
and
instance,
we take questions. So if you're interested in collecting, whether you've been doing it for decades or you're just jumping back in, or you like 4 hours of auction talk, it's perfect for you then.
Well, let's put it this way. We've been on here for over an hour. There's still 100 people listening to this conversation who I'm sure have a lot more questions. So look, these are a lot of fun. We need to do some sports talk more often because there are things we have not gotten to. Certainly the top of the market, the NFTs and all of that stuff is fascinating, but I know Dan and Mike love to talk about some of the pieces that may be sort of less visible and less popular that certainly are no less valuable and significant and collectible. So gentlemen, thank you for doing this. I really do appreciate it as always. Thanks to everybody who joined us. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll do it again sooner than later. Thanks.
Forward to it.
Guys, enjoyed it.
You bet.